Princess Yuna stood at the window of the royal flagship and looked at the stars. She had seen them 1,000 times before. She knew their names, their distances, and their histories. But she had never touched any of them. She had never walked on a planet that was not approved by the Royal Council. She had never breathed air that was not filtered and cleaned and made safe for her precious lungs. She was bored. She was so terribly, horribly bored. Behind her, Lady Sora arranged flowers in a crystal vase. The handmaiden hummed a soft tune, unaware of the princess's restless thoughts. Sora had served Yuna since childhood. She knew the princess better than anyone else in the Empire. But even she did not know what Yuna was planning. "Sora," Yuna said, her voice calm and casual. "Tell me about Earth." The humming stopped. Sora's hands froze over the flowers. "Your Highness should not speak of that place." "Why not?" "It is just a planet." "It is a forbidden planet," Sora said carefully. "The quarantine has been in place for 300 years. No Valanti ship is allowed within 10 light years of its system." "You know this, Your Highness." Yuna turned from the window. Her silver skin glowed softly in the light of the cabin. Her eyes, large and violet, held a spark of mischief. "But why is it forbidden?" "The textbooks say humans are primitive and dangerous. They say humans are violent and unpredictable. But I've read those textbooks 100 times, and they never explain what makes humans so special that we must hide from them." Sora looked uncomfortable. "Perhaps some questions are better left unanswered." "Or perhaps," Yuna said with a small smile, "some questions require answers that our elders do not want us to find." That night, Yuna put her plan into action. She waited until the flagship entered a quiet sector of space, far from any patrol routes. She waited until her mother, Queen Hana, retired to her chambers for the evening meditation. Then she slipped through the corridors like a shadow. Her bare feet silent on the metal floors. Sora was waiting for her at the hangar bay. The handmaiden looked pale and frightened, but she held a small bag of supplies in her hands. "I still think this is madness," Sora whispered. "Then why are you helping me?" Sora sighed. "Because you would go without me if I refused. And someone needs to make sure you come back alive." Yuna hugged her friend quickly. "I will return before morning. No one will even know I was gone." She climbed into a small scout vessel, one of the many ships used for short-range exploration. It was fast and quiet, perfect for slipping away unnoticed. Yuna had learned to fly these ships when she was young. Her mother believed it was important for a princess to understand all aspects of her empire, including its technology. The ship hummed to life. Yuna entered the coordinates she had memorized weeks ago. The navigation system blinked a warning. "Destination prohibited. Quarantine zone Alpha 7. Authorization required." Yuna disabled the warning and launched the ship into the darkness of space. The journey took several hours. Yuna passed the time by reviewing everything she knew about Earth. It was a small planet, blue and green, covered mostly in water. Its sun was yellow and ordinary. Its moon was large and silver. According to ancient records, humans had lived there for thousands of years before the Valanti ever discovered them. The first contact between the two species had been brief and confusing. The Valanti explorers reported that humans were strange creatures. They walked on two legs like the Valanti, but they had no scales, no claws, and no natural weapons. Their bodies were soft and fragile. They died easily from wounds that a Valanti child could survive. And yet, the explorers also reported something troubling. Humans did not behave like weak creatures. They built cities and machines. They fought wars with terrible weapons. They loved and hated with an intensity that seemed almost insane. One explorer wrote in his journal, "These beings feel everything too deeply. They are dangerous not because of their strength, but because of their passion." The Volanthi Empire decided that humans were too unpredictable to join the galactic community. Earth was quarantined. All contact was forbidden. And for 300 years, the planet had been left alone. Forgotten by everyone except curious princesses who read too many old books. Yuna's ship entered Earth's atmosphere just as the sun was rising over a vast continent. She guided the vessel down through clouds of white and gray, her heart beating fast with excitement. Below her, she could see mountains and forests and rivers. She could see the ruins of great cities, their towers broken and covered in green dawn. She chose a landing spot near one of the larger ruins. The ship descended slowly, its engines humming as it touched the ground. Yuna opened the door and stepped outside. The air hit her like a wave. It was thick and warm and full of strange smells. She could taste moisture on her tongue. She could hear birds singing in the trees. Everything was alive. Everything was wild. Everything was beautiful. Yuna laughed out loud. She had never felt so free. She walked toward the ruins, her eyes wide with wonder. The buildings had been tall once, reaching toward the sky like fingers of stone and glass. Now they were broken, their windows empty, their walls covered in plants. Nature had reclaimed what the humans had built. But there was still beauty in the destruction. There was still a story in every fallen stone. Yuna explored for nearly an hour. She found old machines covered in rust. She found strange objects made of plastic and metal. She found pictures on walls, faded but still visible, showing humans with their round faces and colorful clothes. She was so busy looking at these wonders that she did not notice the warning lights on her ship until it was too late. When she returned, the engine was dead. Smoke rose from the power core. Something had failed, something essential, something she did not know how to fix. Yuna stood alone in the ruins of a forgotten world. Her ship broken, her home light years away, and no way to call for help. For the first time in her life, the princess was truly alone. And then she heard footsteps behind her. She turned around, her heart pounding in her chest. A figure emerged from the shadows of a ruined building. It was small, much smaller than her. It had no scales, no claws, no visible weapons. Its skin was a strange brown color, and its eyes were dark and curious. It was a human. A living, breathing human, and he was looking right at her. Yuna did not move. She could not move. Every lesson she had ever learned told her to run, to fight, to defend herself against the dangerous creatures standing before her. But her legs would not obey. Her arms hung frozen at her sides. All she could do was stare. The human stared back at her. He was young, she thought, though she did not know how to measure age in his species. His hair was black and messy, falling over his forehead in uneven strands. His clothes were torn and patched, made from rough fabric that looked handmade. He carried a bag over one shoulder and a long stick in his hand, sharpened at one end like a spear. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The birds continued singing in the trees. The wind continued blowing through the ruins. The universe continued spinning around them, unaware of this historic meeting between two beings who were never supposed to meet. Then the human did something unexpected. He lowered his spear, set it on the ground, and raised both hands, palms facing outward. It was a gesture of peace. Even Yuna, who had never met a human, understood its meaning. "Hello," the human said. His voice was rough but gentle. "You look lost." Yuna blinked. The textbooks had said humans spoke a primitive language full of grunts and strange sounds. But this human spoke clearly, and somehow she understood him. Perhaps the translation device in her ear was working. Perhaps humans and Volanthi were not so different after all. "I am. My ship is broken," she managed to say. The human nodded slowly. He looked at the smoking vessel behind her, then back at her face. I can see that. Do you want help? You would help me? Why not? Yuna did not have an answer. In her world, strangers did not offer help without expecting something in return. In her world, everyone had an agenda, a plan, a reason for every action. But this human simply stood there, waiting for her response, as if helping a stranded alien was the most natural thing in the world. My name is Junho, the human said. What is yours? Yuna. I am called Yuna. Yuna. He repeated her name slowly, testing how it felt on his tongue. That is a pretty name. Come, Yuna. Let me look at your ship. He picked up his spear and walked past her toward the vessel. Yuna followed him, still unsure if she was making a mistake. Her mother would be furious if she knew. The entire empire would be scandalized. A princess of the Volanti throne, following a human like a lost child. But Yuna did not care. Something about this strange creature made her curious. Something about his calm confidence made her feel safe. Junho examined the ship with careful eyes. He opened panels, poked at wires, and sniffed at the smoke rising from the engine. His movements were precise and practiced, as if he had done this many times before. The power core is damaged, he said after a few minutes. Some kind of overload. The converter is fried. Yuna felt her heart sink. Can you fix it? Maybe. I need parts. I have some at my camp. We can go there, work on it tomorrow when the light is better. Tomorrow? But I cannot stay here overnight. I must return home before what? Junho looked at her with those dark, curious eyes. Your ship is dead. You have no way to call for help. You have no food, no water, no shelter. If you stay here tonight, the cold will hurt you. The predators will find you. You will not survive. Yuna wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. She had been foolish. She had been reckless. And now she was paying the price. Follow me, Junho said. My camp is not far. You can rest there. Eat something. In the morning, we will fix your ship and you can go home. He started walking without waiting for her answer. Yuna hesitated for only a moment before following him. The camp was hidden in the ruins of an old building, protected by walls on 3 sides and a roof that still held despite its age. Junho had made it comfortable over time. There was a bed made of soft materials, a fire pit surrounded by stones, and shelves filled with tools and supplies. Everything was organized. Everything was clean. Everything showed careful thought and planning. Junho gave her water in a metal container. It was cool and fresh, better than anything Yuna had tasted on the royal flagship. He gave her food too, strange vegetables cooked over the fire, soft and warm and full of flavor. You live here alone? Yuna asked between bites. Yes, for many years now. How many years? Junho thought for a moment. I stopped counting after 20. My ship crashed when I was young. Everyone else died. I survived. I am sorry. Do not be. It was long ago. I have learned to live here. This planet is my home now. Yuna looked around the camp with new eyes. She saw the photographs on the wall, faded images of people in uniforms smiling at the camera. She saw the carved wooden figures on the shelf, animals and ships and faces. She saw the books stacked in the corner, their pages yellow with age but still readable. This human had not just survived. He had built a life. He had created beauty in a place of ruin. He had kept his sanity in a world of solitude. You are not what I expected, Yuna said quietly. Junho smiled. It was the first time she had seen him smile, and it changed his whole face. He looked younger, warmer, almost handsome in a strange alien way. What did you expect? A monster. A wild beast. Something dangerous and violent. Ah, Junho nodded slowly. Your people have told stories about us. Bad stories. Yes. My people told stories about you people too. We called you the Star Demons. We said you came from the sky to steal our children and burn our cities. Yuna felt a chill run down her spine. We never did those things. I know. Stories are not always true. People fear what they do not understand. They make monsters out of strangers because it is easier than admitting they might be wrong. The fire crackled between them. Shadows danced on the walls. Outside, the night had fallen, and strange sounds filled the darkness. But inside this small camp, Yuna felt warm and safe. Later that night, she heard growling in the distance. She saw Junho grab his spear and move to the entrance of the camp. She watched as 3 large beasts emerged from the ruins, their eyes glowing in the moonlight, their teeth sharp and hungry. Junho did not hesitate. He moved like water, fast and smooth, striking with his spear again and again. The beasts attacked, and he defended. He was smaller than them, weaker than them, but he was smarter. He used the walls to protect his back. He used the fire to scare them. He used every trick he had learned in 20 years of survival. When it was over, 2 beasts were dead, and 1 was running away into the night. Junho stood among the bodies, breathing hard, his spear dripping with blood. Then he did something that surprised Yuna more than anything else she had seen that day. He walked to the edge of the camp, where a small creature was hiding in the shadows. It was a young beast, barely larger than his hand, trembling with fear. It must have followed the adult predators. Too young to hunt, but too curious to stay away. Junho knelt down and picked up the creature gently. He examined its body, found a wound on its leg, and began to clean it with water and cloth. He spoke soft words that Yuna could not hear, calming the small beast until it stopped shaking. Why? Yuna asked. Why do you help it? Its family tried to kill you. Junho looked up at her with those dark, impossible eyes. It is just a baby. It did not choose its family. It does not deserve to die for their mistakes. Yuna did not sleep that night. She sat by the fire and watched this strange creature called human. She watched him care for the wounded beast. She watched him stare at the stars with sad, longing eyes. She watched him fall asleep with the photograph of his dead crew clutched to his chest, and she wondered if everything she had ever been taught was wrong. The days passed slowly on Earth. Yuna told herself she was waiting for her ship to be repaired. She told herself she had no choice but to stay with Junho until the power core was fixed. But deep inside, she knew the truth. She was not staying because she had to. She was staying because she wanted to. Every day brought new discoveries. Every hour revealed something about humans that amazed her, confused her, or terrified her. She began keeping notes in her mind, a list of things she would share with her people when she returned home. A list of reasons why the Volanthi were wrong about humanity. The first thing she noticed was what Junho ate. On the second morning, he took her into the forest to gather food. He showed her plants that grew wild among the trees, roots and leaves and berries of every color. He picked them with quick practiced hands and put them in his bag. You eat these? Yuna asked, looking at a bright red berry with suspicion. Yes, they are good. Sweet. But the scanners on my ship said many of these plants contain poison. Some of them could kill a Volanthi in minutes. Junho shrugged. They do not kill me. My body is used to them. I have eaten these since I was young. Some made me sick at first, but I learned which ones were safe. Now I can eat almost anything. Yuna watched him pop a berry into his mouth and chew happily. She thought about her own diet, the carefully prepared meals on the royal flagship, the filtered water and the vitamin supplements and the endless list of foods that were forbidden because they might harm her delicate system. Humans could eat poison and survive. What else could they do? She learned the answer on the third day. Junho was working on her ship, trying to rebuild the power converter from parts he had collected over the years. His hands moved quickly, connecting wires and adjusting circuits. Yuna watched from a distance, trying to understand what he was doing. Then she saw the blood. "Your hand," she said, pointing at the red liquid dripping from his palm. "You are injured." Junho looked down at the wound. A sharp piece of metal had cut deep into his skin, slicing through flesh and muscle. On a Volanthi, such an injury would require immediate medical attention. It could take months to heal, and it might leave permanent damage. Junho simply wrapped a cloth around his hand and continued working. "Does it not hurt?" Yuna asked. "It hurts. But pain is just information. It tells me something is wrong. It does not stop me from doing what needs to be done." 2 days later, Yuna looked at his hand again. The wound was almost closed. New skin was growing over the cut, pink and fresh and healthy. She could barely see where the injury had been. "How is this possible?" she whispered. "Humans heal fast," Junho said simply. "We have to. Life is dangerous. If we stopped every time we got hurt, we would never accomplish anything." Yuna added another note to her mental list. Humans healed faster than any species she had ever encountered. They could recover from injuries that would cripple a Volanthi warrior. They could survive wounds that should be fatal. But the most disturbing discovery came on the 5th night. Yuna woke in the darkness to find Junho sitting by the dying fire. His eyes were open, staring at nothing. His body was still, but his mind seemed far away. "You are not sleeping," she said softly. "I cannot sleep tonight. Too many thoughts. You should rest. You have been working hard." Junho shook his head. "I will rest when the work is done. A few days without sleep will not kill me." Yuna stared at him in disbelief. "A few days? You have not slept for days?" 3 days. Maybe 4. I lose track sometimes. That is impossible. Every living creature needs sleep. Without it, the body fails. The mind breaks. Junho smiled sadly. Humans are different. We can push ourselves beyond normal limits when we need to. We can ignore hunger, ignore thirst, ignore exhaustion. When something matters enough, we find the strength to keep going. He looked at her with those dark, tired eyes. Your ship matters. Getting you home safely matters. So I will keep working until it is done. Yuna felt something strange in her chest, a warmth she did not recognize. No one had ever worked so hard for her. No one had ever sacrificed so much for her comfort. On the flagship, she was served by hundreds of attendants, but they served because it was their duty. Junho helped because he chose to. On the 6th day, she finally understood why the Volanthi had quarantined Earth. Junho was telling her about his crew, the people he had lost when his ship crashed. He spoke of Captain Minho, a brave man who had led them through the stars. He spoke of the engineers who had kept the ship running, the scientists who had dreamed of discovering new worlds, the young recruits who had laughed and joked during the long journey. You loved them, Yuna said quietly. They were my family, not by blood, but by choice. We took care of each other. We protected each other. When the ship went down, Captain Minho pushed me into the escape pod. He saved my life. He died so I could live. Tears fell from Junho's eyes. Real tears, wet and warm, running down his cheeks without shame. Yuna had never seen a Volanthi cry. Her people believed that emotions should be controlled, hidden, kept locked away where they could not cause trouble. But Junho cried openly. He cried for people who had been dead for 20 years. He cried as if the loss had happened yesterday. This is why they fear you, Yuna whispered. This is the real reason for the quarantine. Junho wiped his eyes and looked at her. What do you mean? The Volanthi did not lock your world away because you are weak or primitive. They locked it away because you are strong in ways we cannot understand. You eat poison and survive. You heal from wounds that would kill us. You work without sleep, fight without rest, love without limits. You feel everything so deeply that it changes you, drives you, makes you capable of things we could never imagine. She stood up and walked to the edge of the camp, looking out at the ruined city below. My people are afraid of many things. We are afraid of change, afraid of uncertainty, afraid of anything we cannot control. But most of all, we are afraid of passion. We believe that strong emotions are dangerous, that they lead to chaos and destruction. She turned back to face him. You are proof that we are wrong. Your passion did not destroy you. It kept you alive. It gave you the strength to survive alone on a dead world for 20 years. It gave you the courage to help a stranger who should have been your enemy. Junho stood and walked toward her. He was shorter than her, smaller than her, weaker than her in every physical way. But in that moment, he seemed like the strongest person she had ever met. Maybe your people will learn, he said softly. Maybe one day they will understand that feelings are not weakness. They are what make life worth living. Yuna looked into his eyes and saw something she had never seen in any Volanthi. She saw hope. She saw love. She saw a heart that refused to give up, no matter how hard the universe tried to break it. And she realized, with sudden and terrible clarity, that she did not want to leave this planet. She did not want to leave him. The ship was almost ready. Junho had worked day and night, using parts from old machines and broken technology scattered across the ruined city. He had rebuilt the power core with his own hands, connecting pieces that were never meant to fit together, creating something new from something destroyed. It was not perfect, but it would work. It would carry Yuna back to the stars. She should have been happy. She should have been eager to return home, to see Sora again, to sleep in her own bed and eat proper food and breathe filtered air. But every time she looked at the ship, her heart felt heavy. Every time she thought about leaving, something inside her resisted. The days had changed her. Junho had changed her. He had taught her things no royal tutor could teach. He showed her how to start a fire with nothing but sticks and patience. He taught her which plants could heal wounds and which could cure sickness. He explained how to read the weather by watching the clouds and how to find direction by studying the stars. These were simple skills, basic knowledge that any human child might learn. But for Yuna, they were revelations. She had grown up in a world of technology and servants, where every need was met before she could even ask. She had never cooked a meal or built a shelter or solved a problem with her own hands. Now she could do all these things. And she loved doing them. More than that, she loved who she became when she was with Junho, on the flagship. She was always Princess Yuna, the heir to the throne, the perfect daughter who must never make mistakes. Everyone treated her with careful respect, measuring every word, hiding every true thought behind masks of politeness. But Junho treated her like a person. He laughed when she made mistakes. He teased her when she complained. He argued with her when he thought she was wrong and admitted when she was right. He did not care about her title or her power or her silver skin. He cared about Yuna, the real Yuna, the curious and stubborn and sometimes foolish girl who had crashed on his planet. No one had ever seen that girl before. Yuna had not even known she existed. On the 10th day, something happened that changed everything. They were walking by the river, looking for fish to catch for dinner. The water was clear and cold, rushing over rocks and fallen trees. Yuna watched Junho wade into the shallows, moving slowly and carefully, his eyes fixed on the water below. She tried to follow him, stepping onto a rock near the edge. But the stone was wet and slippery. Her foot slid. Her body tilted. Before she could catch herself, she fell into the river. The water swallowed her whole. It was deeper than she expected, colder than she could bear. The current grabbed her and pulled her downstream, spinning her around like a leaf in the wind. She tried to swim, but her limbs would not obey. The cold was paralyzing her, freezing her muscles, stealing her strength. She was going to drown. She was going to die on this forgotten planet, far from home, far from everyone she loved. Then she felt a hand grab her arm. Junho had dove into the water without hesitation. He was not a strong swimmer, and the river was fighting him with all its power. But he held on to her with both arms and kicked toward the shore, refusing to let go, refusing to give up. They reached the bank together, coughing and gasping for air. Yuna collapsed on the grass, her body shaking with cold and fear. Junho lay beside her, his chest heaving, his skin blue from the icy water. "You saved me," Yuna whispered when she could finally speak. Junho nodded, still trying to catch his breath. "Of course, but why? You could have died. The water was too strong. You are not built for swimming. You risked your life for me." Junho turned his head and looked at her. His dark eyes were soft, gentle, full of something she could not name. "That is just what you do for someone you care about." Yuna felt her heart stop. Both of them, at the same time, frozen by 6 simple words. Someone you care about. She had heard those words before, in stories and songs and romantic poems. But she had never understood them. She had never felt them. The Lanthi did not speak of caring in such open terms. They spoke of duty and alliance and political advantage. They arranged marriages based on bloodlines and power, not feelings. But this human, this strange and impossible creature, had risked everything for her simply because he cared. That night, they sat by the fire together, wrapped in warm blankets Junho had made from animal skins. The stars shone above them, bright and endless, calling Yuna back to the world she had left behind. "The ship is ready," Junho said quietly. "You can leave tomorrow. I know. Your family must be worried. Your friend, the one you mentioned, Sora, she must miss you." "I know." Junho was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "Will you come back?" Yuna turned to look at him. In the firelight, his face was beautiful. Not beautiful like a Volanti noble, with perfect scales and elegant features. Beautiful in a human way, with lines and scars and imperfections that told the story of a life fully lived. "I want to," she said honestly. "But the quarantine, the laws, my mother would never allow it. Then this is goodbye." The words hung in the air between them, heavy and painful. Yuna felt tears forming in her eyes. She had never cried before meeting Junho. Now she seemed to cry every day. "I do not want it to be goodbye," she said softly. Junho reached out and took her hand. His fingers were warm against her cold skin, rough from years of hard work, but gentle in their touch. "Neither do I." They sat together in silence, watching the fire burn down to embers. The night grew colder, but Yuna did not feel it. She was warm inside, burning with emotions she did not know how to handle. She thought about her life on the flagship. The boring meetings, the endless ceremonies, the constant pressure to be perfect. She thought about the throne that waited for her, the crown that would one day sit on her head, the responsibilities that would consume her entire existence. Then she thought about this moment. This fire, this planet, this human dot. She thought about how alive she had felt in the past 10 days. How free, how happy. And she made a decision. "I am not leaving without you," she said suddenly. Junho looked at her with wide eyes. "What? I will take you with me. Back to the flagship. Back to my people." "Yuna, that is impossible." Your laws forbid it. Your mother would. My mother will have to accept it. Yuna squeezed his hand tightly. I have spent my whole life following rules and obeying orders. I have spent my whole life being what everyone else wanted me to be. For once, I want to make my own choice. And I choose you. Junho stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face. It was the most beautiful thing Yuna had ever seen. You are crazy, he said. Maybe, but you taught me that passion is not weakness. You taught me that feelings matter. You taught me to fight for what I believe in. She stood up, pulling him to his feet. Tomorrow, we fly together. Whatever happens next, we face it together. Junho looked at the stars, then back at her. His eyes were shining with tears and hope and something that might have been love. Together, he agreed Dodd, and for the first time in 300 years, a human prepared to leave Earth. The journey back to the royal flagship took 6 hours. 6 long, silent hours during which Yuna tried to prepare herself for what was coming. Beside her, Junho sat in the passenger seat, looking out at the stars with wonder in his eyes. He had never traveled through space before. He had never seen the universe from this perspective, vast and beautiful and terrifying all at once. It is bigger than I imagined, he said softly. The universe? Everything. The stars. The darkness. The distance between worlds. He turned to look at her. I understand now why your people never came back. We must seem so small to you. So unimportant. Yuna shook her head. You are not small. You are not unimportant. My people were wrong to think so. The flagship appeared on the horizon like a silver mountain floating in space. It was enormous, large enough to hold 10,000 Volanti, with engines that could cross galaxies and weapons that could destroy planets. This was the heart of the Empire, the symbol of Volanti power and dominance. And Yuna was about to bring a human into its most sacred halls. The docking bay was filled with guards when they landed. Sora was there too, her face pale with relief and fear. She ran toward the ship as the door opened, ready to embrace her princess, ready to welcome her home. Then she saw Junho step out behind Yuna, and she froze. The guards raised their weapons. Alarms began to sound. Voices shouted commands and warnings. In seconds, the entire bay was in chaos, with soldiers pointing plasma rifles at the small human who stood calmly beside their princess. Do not shoot, Yuna commanded. Her voice was strong and clear, cutting through the noise like a blade. Lower your weapons. This human is under my protection. Your Highness, one of the guards said, his voice shaking. That creature is forbidden. The quarantine laws clearly state. I know what the laws state. I wrote a report on them when I was 12 years old. Yuna stepped forward, placing herself between Junho and the weapons. This human saved my life. Multiple times. He repaired my ship when it was destroyed. He protected me from predators. He gave me food and water and shelter when I had nothing. If you want to harm him, you will have to go through me first. The guards hesitated. They looked at each other, uncertain. No one wanted to be the soldier who fired on the princess. Before anyone could make a decision, a new voice echoed through the bay. What is the meaning of this? The crowd parted. The guards knelt. Even Sora dropped to her knees. Her head bowed low. Queen Hannah walked through the docking bay like a storm made flesh. She was taller than any other Volanti, her scales a deep royal purple, her eyes burning with barely controlled fury. The crown on her head glittered with gems from 100 conquered worlds. The cloak on her shoulders flowed behind her like a river of gold. She stopped 10 steps away from Yuna and stared at the scene before her. Her daughter, standing protectively in front of a small, strange creature. A human. A living, breathing human on her flagship in the heart of her empire. Yuna, the queen said slowly, explain yourself. Yuna took a deep breath. She had practiced this speech a dozen times during the journey. She had planned every word, every argument, every logical point she would make. But now, standing before her mother, all those careful plans disappeared from her mind. "Mother," she began, "I know I broke the law. I know I violated the quarantine. I know you are angry, and you have every right to be. But please, listen to me before you make any decisions." "I am listening." Yuna looked back at Junho, who stood silently behind her, his face calm despite the dozens of weapons pointed at his heart. He gave her a small nod of encouragement. She turned back to her mother. "I went to Earth because I was curious, because I wanted to understand why we fear humans so much. And I found answers, Mother. Answers that will change everything we think we know." She stepped forward, her voice growing stronger. "Humans are not monsters. They are not the violent beasts our textbooks describe. This human, his name is Junho, he is kind and brave and intelligent. He survived alone on a dead planet for 20 years. He built a life from nothing. He helped me, a stranger from a species that abandoned his world, without asking for anything in return." Queen Hannah's eyes moved to Junho. She studied him with cold, calculating precision, the way she might study a new weapon or a dangerous enemy. "He is small, weak. How could such a creature survive where our own scouts have failed?" "Because humans are stronger than they look," Yuna said. "They adapt. They learn. They push through pain and exhaustion and despair. They love so deeply that it gives them power beyond anything we can understand." She paused, gathering her courage for what came next. "Mother, I know what I am asking is unprecedented. I know it goes against 300 years of tradition and law, but I am asking anyway." She took another step forward, close enough now to touch the Queen's golden cloak. "I want to keep him. I want Junho to stay with me, here on the flagship. I want to prove to our people that humans deserve a second chance." She looked up into her mother's eyes, those ancient, powerful eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. "Mom, can I keep him?" The throne room fell completely silent. No one moved. No one breathed. The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Queen Hannah stared at her daughter for what felt like an eternity. Her face was unreadable, a mask of royal composure that revealed nothing of the storm beneath. Then she spoke. "You asked me to break the most ancient law of our empire. You asked me to accept a creature that our ancestors deemed too dangerous to exist among us. You asked me to risk everything, our safety, our traditions, our very way of life for this. This thing you found on a forbidden world." "Yes," Yuna said quietly. "I do. And if I refuse? If I order this human executed, as the law demands?" Yuna did not hesitate. "Then you will have to execute me as well, because I will not let him die. I will fight for him with every breath in my body. I will stand against the entire empire if I must." Another long silence. The tension in the room was unbearable. Then, to everyone's shock, Queen Hannah laughed. It was not a happy laugh. It was not a warm laugh. It was the cold, bitter laugh of a ruler who had just discovered that her daughter was far more stubborn than she had ever imagined. "You are truly my child," the Queen said finally. "Foolish and brave and impossible to control." She turned to the guards. "Lower your weapons. The human will not be executed. Not today." Relief flooded through Yuna's body. But she knew this was not over. Her mother's face was still hard, still dangerous. "However," Queen Hannah continued, "I cannot simply accept this creature into our court. The law exists for a reason. The people will demand justice. They will demand proof that this human is not the threat our ancestors believed him to be." She looked at Junho, who had remained silent through the entire exchange. "You human, do you understand what my daughter has done?" She has risked her position, her future, her very life for you. Are you worth such a sacrifice? Junho met the Queen's gaze without flinching. His voice was calm and steady when he spoke. I do not know if I am worth anything, Your Majesty. I am just a man who has tried to survive. But I know one thing for certain. Your daughter is worth everything. And I will do whatever it takes to prove that her faith in me was not misplaced. Queen Hannah studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. Very well. You will be given a chance to prove yourself. 3 trials designed to test your mind, your body, and your spirit. If you succeed, you may stay. If you fail, she did not need to finish the sentence. Everyone understood. The trials begin tomorrow, the Queen announced. Until then, the human will be confined to quarters under guard. No one is to harm him. No one is to help him. He must face what comes next alone. She turned and walked away, her cloak trailing behind her like a shadow. Yuna watched her go, her heart still racing. She had won the first battle. Junho was alive. He had a chance, but the war was far from over. The first trial began at dawn. Junho was brought to a great hall deep within the flagship, where the Empire's greatest scholars had gathered to witness his test. They sat in rows of curved seats, their silver and purple scales gleaming under the bright lights, their eyes fixed on the small human who stood alone in the center of the room. Queen Hannah watched from her throne, her face revealing nothing. Beside her, Yuna sat with her hands clasped tightly in her lap, trying to hide her fear. General Nari stepped forward to explain the rules. She was an old warrior with scars on her face and contempt in her eyes. She had opposed Yuna's decision from the beginning and had made no secret of her desire to see the human fail. This is the trial of mind, General Nari announced. Before you is a puzzle that our greatest scientists have studied for generations. It is a machine from an ancient civilization, designed to test the intelligence of any species that finds it. We have tried for 300 years to solve its mystery. We have failed. She pointed to a strange device on a table in front of Junho. It was made of metal and crystal, with gears and switches and lights that seemed to have no pattern or purpose. It looked like chaos frozen in physical form. You have 1 hour, General Nari said with a cruel smile. Begin. The scholars watched in silence as Junho approached the device. He walked around it slowly, studying it from every angle. He touched its surface, felt its weight, listened to the sounds it made when he moved different parts. Yuna held her breath. She knew Junho was intelligent. She had seen him solve problems on Earth that would have stumped any Volanti engineer. But this was different. This was a puzzle designed by beings far more advanced than either of their species. It was meant to be impossible. Junho picked up the device and turned it over in his hands. He began moving pieces, pressing buttons, turning gears. His movements were quick but careful, like a musician playing a familiar instrument. The scholars whispered among themselves. Some laughed at his random efforts. Others shook their heads in disappointment. But Junho did not stop. He kept working, kept trying, kept failing, and starting again. 20 minutes passed. 30. 40. Then something changed. Junho paused. His eyes narrowed. He tilted his head, looking at the device from a new angle. Slowly, a smile spread across his face. I see it now, he said softly. You have been trying to follow the rules, but the puzzle has no rules. It wants you to break them. He grabbed 2 pieces that were never meant to touch and forced them together. The device made a terrible grinding sound. The scholars gasped in horror. General Nari stepped forward, ready to declare his failure. But then the grinding stopped. The lights began to glow. The gears began to turn smoothly and perfectly. For the first time in 300 years, The puzzle was solved. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. General Nare stood frozen, her mouth hanging open. Even Queen Hana leaned forward on her throne, her eyes wide with surprise. "How?" one of the scholars demanded. "How did you do what we could not?" Junho set down the device and shrugged. "You tried to understand the puzzle by studying it. I tried to understand it by playing with it. Sometimes the answer is not in the details. Sometimes you need to step back and see the whole picture." He looked up at the queen with steady eyes. Humans call this thinking outside the box. It means finding solutions that others cannot see because they are too focused on what they expect to find. The first trial was over. Junho had passed. The second trial came that afternoon. Junho was taken to the Arena of Flames, a massive stadium used to test the endurance of Volante warriors. The floor was covered in burning coals. The walls radiated heat. The air itself seemed to catch fire with every breath. "This is the trial of body," General Nari announced, her voice barely hiding her satisfaction. "You must cross the arena and reach the other side. You have 30 minutes. If you collapse, if you give up, if you fail to finish before time runs out, you lose." The Volante had thick scales that protected them from heat. They could walk across burning coals without feeling pain. But Junho was human. His skin was soft and fragile. The arena was designed to destroy him. Junho wanted to scream. She wanted to run down and stop this madness. But her mother's hand on her arm held her in place. "Watch," Queen Hana said quietly. "Let us see what your human can do." Junho stepped into the arena. The heat hit him like a wall, stealing the breath from his lungs. He could feel his skin beginning to burn, his body beginning to fail. Every instinct told him to run, to escape, to save himself from this impossible pain. But he did not run. He moved forward, one step at a time. The crowd watched in disbelief as this small, soft creature walked through fire. They saw him stumble and fall. They saw him rise again. They saw the burn spreading across his arms and legs, the smoke rising from his clothes, the agony written on his face. And still he moved forward. Halfway across the arena, Junho stopped. He looked at the coals beneath his feet. He looked at the walls of flame around him. And then he did something that no Volante had ever thought to do. He used the fire. He grabbed burning coals with his bare hands and threw them at the arena walls, creating gaps in the flames. He tore strips from his clothes and wrapped them around his feet, giving himself temporary protection from the heat. He moved between the gaps he had created, using the fire's own power against itself. He was not just surviving the arena. He was conquering it. When he finally reached the other side, the clock showed 22 minutes. He collapsed on the cool stone floor, his body covered in burns and blisters. But he was alive. He had finished. The second trial was over. Junho had passed. That night, doctors treated his wounds while Yuna sat beside his bed, holding his bandaged hand. She wanted to speak, to tell him how proud she was, how scared she had been, how much she loved him. But the words would not come. So she simply sat with him, watching him sleep, grateful that he was still breathing. The third trial came the next morning. Junho was brought before the queen in a private chamber, away from the crowds and the scholars and the generals. Only Yuna and Sora were allowed to witness what happened next. Queen Hana sat on a simple chair, without her crown or her golden cloak. She looked tired, older than usual, like a mother rather than a monarch. "The third trial is the trial of spirit," she said quietly. "It is the simplest trial and also the hardest." She gestured to a servant, who brought forward a small box. Inside was a device, a communication unit linked to a hidden ship in the docking bay. "This ship is fueled and ready," the queen explained. "It contains supplies, coordinates, and everything you need to survive. Press this button and you will be transported aboard. The ship will take you anywhere you wish to go. You will be free." Junho looked at the device, then at the Queen. "And if I press it?" "You leave. Forever. You never see my daughter again. But you live. You return to the stars as a free man, with no one hunting you, no one judging you, no one expecting anything from you." Junho was silent for a long moment. Queen Hannah leaned forward. "I am offering you freedom, human. True freedom. No more trials. No more tests. No more proving yourself to people who hate you. All you have to do is walk away." Yuna felt her heart breaking. She understood now. This was the real test. Not of Junho's mind or body, but of his heart. The Queen wanted to know if he truly loved her daughter, or if he was simply using her to escape his lonely planet. Junho looked at the device. He looked at the door. He looked at Yuna. Then he looked at the Queen. No. The word was soft but firm. "No?" Queen Hannah raised an eyebrow. "You refuse freedom?" "I refuse to abandon someone I love." Junho set the device back in its box and pushed it away. "You can kill me if you want. You can throw me in prison. You can do whatever your laws demand. But I am not leaving Yuna. Not today. Not ever." Queen Hannah stared at him for a long, long time. Then, slowly, a small smile appeared on her face. "The trial of spirit is complete," she said. "You have passed." Yuna let out a cry of relief and joy. She ran to Junho and threw her arms around him, not caring about royal dignity or proper behavior. He held her tightly, his bandaged hands gentle on her back. Queen Hannah watched them embrace, and for a moment she did not look like a queen at all. She looked like a mother, watching her daughter find something precious and rare. She looked like someone who was beginning to understand. The days following the trials were strange and difficult. The news of the humans spread through the flagship like wildfire. Some Valanti were curious, eager to see the creature who had solved the ancient puzzle and survived the arena of flames. Others were angry, demanding that the quarantine laws be upheld and the human executed. Queen Hannah called a council meeting to decide Junho's fate. Generals argued with scholars. Nobles shouted at priests. The debate raged for hours, with no agreement in sight. But in the end, the Queen made the decision herself. She declared that Junho would be granted status as a guest of the royal house. He would not be a citizen, not a subject, but something new, something that had never existed in Valanti lore before. He would be protected by the throne, allowed to live among them, free to come and go as he pleased. Some cheered. Many protested. But no one dared challenge the Queen's word. That evening, Queen Hannah summoned Yuna to her private chambers. The room was quiet and simple, filled with old books and family portraits. This was where the Queen came to think, to remember, to be herself rather than her crown. Yuna entered nervously. She had not spoken privately with her mother since returning from Earth. She did not know what to expect. Queen Hannah sat by the window, looking out at the stars. She gestured for Yuna to sit beside her. "I am going to tell you a truth," the Queen said slowly. "A truth that has been kept secret for 300 years. It is time you knew." Yuna leaned forward, her heart beating fast. "Our ancestors did not quarantine Earth because humans were primitive or dangerous," the Queen began. "In fact, they found humans fascinating. They admired their creativity, their passion, their endless ability to adapt and survive. Then why the quarantine?" Yuna asked. "Fear." The Queen's voice was soft, almost sad. "Not fear of what humans were, but fear of what they could become. Our scientists studied the human species and made predictions about their future. They calculated growth rates, technology curves, population trends, and they discovered something terrifying." She turned to look at her daughter. Humans were evolving too fast. They were advancing too quickly. At the rate they were growing, they would surpass us within 1,000 years. They would become the dominant species in the galaxy, and we would become nothing. Yuna felt cold. So we locked them away. Yes, we told ourselves it was for their own good. We said they were too young, too volatile, too dangerous. But the truth is, we were afraid. We were afraid of being replaced. We were afraid of being forgotten. So we hid them on their planet and tried to pretend they did not exist. The Queen stood and walked to a portrait on the wall. It showed a Volanti ruler from long ago, dressed in ancient robes, holding a scepter of power. "This was my grandmother," the Queen said. "She was the one who signed the quarantine order. She believed she was protecting our empire. She believed she was doing the right thing. But she was wrong." She turned back to Yuna. "I have watched your human, Yuna. I have seen him face trials that would break our strongest warriors. I have seen him refuse freedom because he refused to leave your side. And I have realized something that my grandmother never understood." "What is that, Mother?" "The future cannot be stopped. It cannot be locked away or hidden or controlled. It will come whether we are ready or not." She walked back to the window and looked out at the endless darkness. Humans will rise. It is inevitable. The question is not whether we can prevent it. The question is whether we will be their enemies or their friends when it happens. She smiled softly, an expression Yuna had rarely seen on her mother's face. "Your human has shown me that friendship is possible. He has shown me that not all passion leads to destruction. He has shown me that sometimes the bravest thing a ruler can do is admit she was wrong." Yuna felt tears running down her face. She had never loved her mother more than in that moment. "What happens now?" she whispered. Queen Hana took a deep breath. "Now, we change. We lift the quarantine on Earth. We open communications with the human survivors. We invite them to join the galactic community as partners, not prisoners." She turned to face her daughter with pride in her eyes. "And you, my dear Yuna, will lead this effort. You will be our ambassador to humanity. You will build bridges between our worlds. You will prove that what you and Junho have found together can exist on a larger scale." Yuna stood up, her heart overflowing with emotion. "I will not fail you, Mother. I know you will not. You are my daughter. You are stubborn and brave and impossible to control." The Queen laughed softly. "Perhaps that is exactly what this situation needs." 1 month later, the announcement was made. The quarantine on Earth was officially lifted. Ships were sent to the planet, carrying supplies, technology, and invitations. The humans who had survived there, small scattered communities hidden in the ruins of their old civilization, were offered a choice. They could stay on their world and rebuild, or they could join the Volanti Empire as equals and partners. Most chose to stay. Earth was their home, and they were not ready to leave it behind. But some chose to venture into the stars, to see what the universe had to offer, to fulfill the dreams their ancestors had dreamed long ago. Yuna traveled to Earth as the first official ambassador. Junho went with her, returning to the planet where he had spent 20 lonely years. But this time, he was not alone. This time, he was bringing hope. They stood together on a hill overlooking the ruined city where they had first met. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. New structures were rising among the old ruins, built by human and Volanti hands working together. "I never thought I would see this," Junho said quietly. "I never thought I would see my world come back to life." Yuna took his hand and held it tight. "It is only the beginning. There will be challenges. There will be conflicts. Our peoples have much to learn about each other. But we have time. We have hope. And we have each other." Junho smiled, that beautiful human smile that still made her heart skip. "You changed everything. You know, That day you crashed on my planet. That day you asked me for help. You changed the fate of 2 entire species. No, Una said, shaking her head. We changed it together. I could not have done any of this without you. They stood in silence for a while, watching the sun disappear below the horizon. The first stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere up there, the royal flagship was orbiting, carrying the queen and the generals and the scholars who were learning to see humans in a new light. Somewhere up there, the future was waiting. Years later, when historians wrote about this moment, they would call it the beginning of the Great Alliance. They would describe the treaties that were signed, the technologies that were shared, the friendships that were formed. They would analyze the political and economic factors that made it possible, the careful diplomacy that prevented war, the slow building of trust between 2 species that have been separated for centuries. But when people asked how it really started, how 2 worlds that had feared each other for so long finally came together, the answer was always simpler. A curious princess broke the rules and landed on a forbidden planet. A lonely human offered her help without asking for anything in return. They fell in love, and that love gave them the courage to face an empire. And when the princess brought her human home, when she stood before the most powerful ruler in the galaxy and asked the most innocent of questions, the queen finally said yes. In the end, it was not politics or strategy or power that changed history. It was just a girl, a boy, and a love that refused to be quarantined. And that, the historians would agree, was the most human thing of all.